Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome to another video. Let's just talk about what happened very recently with Uma Musume. The developers quite dropped the patch that, well, people were expecting, but a lot of people weren't also expecting the changes that it kind of brought to the table kind of out of nowhere. Now, I believe they did bring most of the changes when it comes to the skills, but then there were two certain ones that really changed the course of what's to come, at least for when it comes to this upcoming CM. So, of course, it is the Unity 2.0 and URA 2.0 updates. What that essentially did was pretty much killed Trackblazer, more ways than one. Now, I'm not going to go over what exactly, all this and that, but maybe we'll touch upon it here and there. But I actually wanted to, funny enough, talk about Trackblazer of itself and present a question here to the table for the sake of a friendly discussion. And that is, was Trackblazer all that bad? Of course, before the unexpected update. So, I'm just going to talk about the things that I disliked and perhaps other people disliked about. So I'm going to bring up the points that people and myself did like about Trackblazer, and the other points that people didn't like about as myself. And we'll just go over, whether it was that bad or not, I guess. Again, for the sake of the discussion or conversation. So let's bring up the likes when it comes to the Trackblazer, the pros, if you will. So the biggest one of them all, well, until the 2.0 updates came for Unity and URA, were of course the level of hits that you were able to get for any of the stats in Trackblazer. And especially if it's something you can actually control, via the items in the shop. And of course, by the summer times, you will see the biggest hits of them all. And that's really when you want to train, right? That's where all the training happens, is beach day. And then, of course, as in RNG stuff, if you have a pretty big hit as you're supposed to be scheduled for a race, you're supposed to hit it, right? Especially when it's 30 or plus 30 or whatever, and over, right? You don't want to miss out on that type of hit, right? You just can't help to just click on that, get that rainbow hit, and boom, right? So that was something you were able to see in Trackblazer. This is another point that still kind of stands a bit, but during the time of Trackblazer by itself, the parent runs were actually pretty good, all things considered, especially when it hits well. You do get a lot of the white skills that would be embedded into that said parent, of course, if they're good ones. And the ceiling of the time was pretty high. As mentioned with another pro, is the shop. The shop of itself was actually pretty nice whenever it did give you the items. You can actually control, again, you have that control of your runs in a sense, with how much you can race, how much you can if you have a bunch of energy items and you have a bunch of good luck charms and all this and that, the muffins, right, the cupcakes, you can actually race more than what one would normally do. And that was supposed to be sort of like the mentality going into Trackblazer. As long as you have all these items, go ahead and race, because that's the name of the game. It's all about just hitting the track, race, win, and get those stats, get the SP up, what have you. And then, of course, when you hit too many races, you hit the bad condition, skin break or whatever. But that because of the cupcakes, the medicine, the energy items, right? You can heal up, get back onto the track, and do some more. As long as you probably do 3 or 4, that's probably like the right amount. But how often you do sit for 3 or 4 races, right? That's really up to the schedule, of course, the cupcakes, all those items that you have. As long as you were able to gather that amount of items, then you have that sense of control. Next, the next pro is that you can race any race. This allows each of the UMA to kind of break the boundaries of their story events and actually race any of the races offered in Trackblazer. So, for example, Bourbon, classic example, Bourbon can do the Triple Crown. You can finally get it, and then you can finally earn those epithets that are associated with, the race patterns and conditions and all that stuff. Unlike the other ones where you're locked into whichever race, Trackblazer, you're just, the key is yours pretty much when it comes to that. This one kind of depends on how you look at it, but I think it's more of a pro than anything at this point, is that the scenario doesn't have actual scenario link cards. Unlike the last one, which is Unity, had Rico, had the right shower power, or just any right shower card, I guess. Rico, that is especially, was a link card for that scenario, whereas this one didn't really ask for anything. So in a sense, you definitely don't have to spend money or spend your carrots going into this one. And especially by the time what happened here, it definitely doesn't feel like a complete waste. Whereas cards such as Fukukitaru, but especially Narita Top Road, where Narita Top Road really shines with the amount of how many fans you have at the earlier start, because you get the maximum potential out of it with 200,000 racers, which you can easily do in Trackblazer early on, but because of how the other scenarios work, you can only get barely 300,000 by the end of said scenario. So there, Night to Top Road actually falls off pretty badly. And again, you can see what happened in Trackblazer. So therefore, Top Road fell off, as well as another card that came into the middle of a CM with the Trackblazer era. The last positive point for Trackblazer is that there were no story events for any of the UMA, but it also comes with some nuances, or it really just depends on which UMA you're training. Obviously, some story events were pretty bad. It actually, it was a detriment towards that UMA, like Narita Taishin, and of course there's Super Creek and Major Arden, for examples. And that's kind of where it ends for Trackblazer when it comes to the positive points, and it actually will segue into the dislike / negative points for Trackblazer. And the first point in that category is that there were no story events, right? So it kind of goes both ways. As there are positives to having no story events, there are negatives to it as well. So there are story events where it actually really makes it good for certain UMA, including Taiki Shuttle, and there are also ones like Mayano Top Gun, and even, of course, Suzuka. You would have to go back to Unity 1.0 to get Runaway if you wanted to do the Runaway style for Suzuka. But that meant that you're really hitching on the stats you're able to get at the time. Again, until now. Back onto Mayano, she doesn't have access to those skills that depending on what style you want to go for Mayano. So if you want to do an encloser one, she doesn't get straight away spurt or anything like that, because of the lack of story events. Probably the biggest negative, or at least one of them anyway, that it was a miles race galore. So the way with Trackblazer worked, and because there are lots of mile races in the early phase, that meant that you have to excel in the mile distance, which there are a lot of UMA that don't. You would really have to either spark it up or spark enough to get by and get away with it, which is around like B or something, a B rank on the mile distance. But even then, it also presented another problem with this type of gameplay. And of course, that when you're training, and it does become more apparent when you're training late surgers and end closers, because they often get blocked. These races have a lot of UMA in them. It's probably like 18 or something like that, 12, 18 or something like that, quite a bit, which does bring up a lot of chances of getting blocked, and therefore losing to the rival UMA by a head or half, whatever. Even if you lose by a little bit, that's all it takes, right? That's what horse racing is. But the same thing goes to you. If you win by a little bit, that's a win. But a lot of times your UMA comes in second, therefore you kind of miss out on the stats, the SP. Of course, the number of races you win, you miss out on that, which really makes a difference of how your UMA grows by the end of any Trackblazer career. As mentioned, the Smile Sparks, you really have to bring them in. That's another sort of point into this, of the negative side of things. Mile Sparks, you gotta get those ready in order to get through the early part and all the other mile races really in on the calendar, right? And the next point I've already mentioned, but I will make it a full point now, that it was really difficult, especially for the end closers and the late surgers, and that of course made it difficult for me as someone who considers himself a backliner main. My first Trackblazer UMA that I really wanted to get going was Tamura Cross, and I got Tamura Cross not too long after her banner came out, and I really wanted to get her going during the very first CM in the Trackblazer era, which was a long race that was raining. Therefore, it was the most difficult thing that could have happened at the given time with the given circumstances. So that made it all the more difficult for someone like Tamamo to be able to get through it. And unfortunately, the payoff wasn't all that great. The Tamamo Cross that I best trained didn't even win it all that much. It was Golshi that won it more than anything. She carried my team, but we still didn't win quite a bit, and that was kind of a weak CM overall in terms of my performance. I guess that does actually bring up another negative that I didn't even have on my list here, which is the difficult learning curve. There was a proper tutorial didn't even really pop in until really the tail end of Trackblazer. That's how really difficult it was to really get an understanding on how Trackblazer really works. And of course, on the surface, I mean, Trackblazer, right? You're supposed to race. That's the name of the game. But it's like, when to do that, what's the type of mentality you got to go in with it, and when, really just when to do it, right? And of course, that's when when you have all these items, then that's when you race, right? Because you can cure yourself of the consequences that come with racing a lot. So not only you are limited to using certain UMA if you don't want any difficulty, but you're also limited on the deck building. So this scenario really asks for cards that have race bonuses. It really took away all the other ones like Sweep Tosho and King Halo SRs and all the other SRs and SSRs that you usually use. But then you are really limited to cards like Fukukitaru, NTR, and so on and so forth, of course. But luckily we had free cards like the Marvelous Sunday Power card, and then if you're lucky enough, the Nishino Flower Power card, SR, so on and so forth. Some other event cards kind of worked if you really are a free-to-play player. But yeah, it really limited the amount of expression you were able to have when it comes to the deck building. So you're really set on set cards, but I guess in a sense that it also brought certain cards more to the spotlight, such as Nice Nature, right? The Nice Nature Wit card with the 15% race bonus overall, stuff like that. I mean, obviously, when it takes away some cards, it brings up the other cards naturally, right? Just that checks and balances almost. But that doesn't take away the point that the race bonus really, is what it's asking for, therefore limiting the variety in the deck building. The other big negative that Trackblazer brought was, of course, the length of each of these career runs. It can take from as short as 40 minutes, but to upwards of maybe an hour. But average time is 50 minutes, or somewhere between 45 to 50 minutes. But that's still too long for any of the scenario runs up to this point. And that also made it pretty difficult for a lot of people, to the point where by the time CM15 popped in, a lot of people were already phoning it in at this point. People were just bringing in the old Umas from CM13, because I noticed there's a lot of gold ships with Firm Course Menace on them. So it's like, oh my. So that really made it obvious and clear that people were just fed up with this scenario. But with all that said, with all those dislikes being said, we also should think of the positives as well, the likes, to kind of give it that fair standing. But when it comes to it, though, I mean, does one like it or not? I mean, I think it seems like, based off of the polls that I did, strangely enough, on the YouTube side of things, it looked like more people liked it from the ones that that did interact with that poll. But when it comes to Twitter, even in a small sample, is an overwhelming no. So this was actually rather decisive than anything, and the list of the notes I have of the likes and dislikes is actually pretty even. And I guess I'll bring it up now with all the positives and negatives. But yeah, it's pretty even. So it does correlate with the point that it is quite decisive than one would think. It's not a complete overwhelming or unanimous no, and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to me personally, when it comes to Trackblazer, whether I liked it or not, I have a sort of this love and hate sort of thing for it. I do like how you do have control in a sense, but with how it was structured and everything, it just took too long. The mile races were really annoying, and it made it really hard for the end closers and the backliners to get through the early stuff. It was just really annoying at times, and not to mention a lot of people wasted their alarm clocks on it. A lot of people lost all their alarm clocks, especially with how many times they did play per day. Now, I think I'm in a minority of this, but I actually gained the amount of alarm clocks because the amount of times I played per day, which is just one, sometimes two, or in even rarer times three. But at this point, I think I have about more or less 760-ish alarm clocks. I'll put a screenshot right here. But as of this recording, though, I have over 700 alarm clocks, which I don't know how, but I guess I wasn't crazy enough about Trackblazer. So I guess that tells me that I'm more on the dislike side. And especially by the time the July patch came in and they unexpectedly updated Unity Cup and URA, they pretty much presented the door, and I took that door, got out of there pretty much. With what Unity Cup did to, or what the devs did to those two scenarios, we got back there so fast, and we have been declaring Trackblazer pretty much dead at this point, especially for ace runs. Ace runs for Trackblazer is completely dead. There's really no reason other than you really liking Radiant Star, but the stats you get with the amount of time you spent and the ease of difficulty in the other two scenarios blows Trackblazer out of the water. Absolutely. So rather than doing Trackblazer, I rather just take Unity Cup because when it comes to training for this upcoming CM. It just completely changed. The guides, right? The guide makers, they have to redo their guides because it really, really changed up a lot of things with this patch. And not only Trackblazer is dead, but some cards like Knight to Top Road, well, of course, Throne, right? This Throne is supposed to be like lightning in a bottle, but it ended even shorter than, well, the 2 CMs. No, way less people are going to be using it. There still is some sort of incentive to use it. You could use it with Unity, but for me, I'd rather just use cards that give me the necessary skills for said CM, which is a sprint one, than using something like Throne. It offers good stats, but the 2 scenarios already give enough stats that it's really not necessary. It really isn't. And unless you're training for another medium CM, then I guess it would have called for it. But at this time, it ain't it. And now that we have Grand Life coming up after that, it really does not ask for a Throne because of the way the deck building works in that one. And that of itself will limit expression as well, which will carry that negative from Trackblazer to Grand Life, unfortunately. So further reason why Throne is also pretty much dead as well. Much more dead than expected. But yeah. However you may look at it though, Trackblazer definitely ended on a very, very unexpected note. But I think it's for the better. It honestly saved the game quite a bit. And I think going forward, you know, we can kind of just have this sense of relief. Oh, you know, we got out of the Trackblazer shackles quite sooner than expected, all thanks to this patch right here. Not only I brought the Unity and URA updates now with the sparks and everything. We got the Spark re-rolling, which has been really nice so far, and other such little quality of life updates. It's just nice. It's been really nice, and I'm glad that they did this really bold move, but it just really made it funny for, you know, things like Trackblazer, for example, and the Throne card, and so on and so forth. So, makes me definitely glad that I didn't pull for that card, because that only lived for pretty much 5 days. It only had 5 days of its prime use. Unless you really want to use it for the stats, or getting extra stats in Unity 2.0, yeah, it's pretty much dead in the water, along with Trackblazer. Alright, so that's pretty much like my piece on Trackblazer. Overall, I definitely was more on the dislike side. I didn't like it, but, you know, it was a scenario at the time. It was the most updated one. It got quite a bit of points. I definitely was able to get double SS once from this whole thing, so that is something, I guess. Up to this point, I was able to win at least 2 of the CMs in a row too, at that, which is pretty nice. So that is something to take away from with Trackblazer. But again, that doesn't change the fact that, well, I'm glad it's over, pretty much. And I can just kind of go back to the easier things for now with Unity 2.0, and then of course Grand Life will take over. And we'll see how well that goes. And maybe perhaps they'll bring another sort of big update, you know. Global has been pretty interesting with Uma Musume. I mean, a lot of things have, well, yes, we're on the accelerated schedule, but even then it's still quite short for a number of things, right? So anyways, thank you very much for listening to me and watching this video. Really appreciate it. If you like and subscribe, really helps out, and I do appreciate it. If you have any comments, I welcome them in the comment section below about Trackblazer. What are your guys' experience with Trackblazer? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What are the things that you liked about it? Things that you didn't like about it? And all that. And how you guys feel about the game after this July patch. So thanks, and hope to see you all in the next video. Sean out. Let me actually add one more point that it's actually on the positive side for Trackblazer in this video, and it's that one of the best things that did come out of Trackblazer is the song for the scenario, which is Blow My Gale, which is actually still one of my favorite songs to this day when it comes to scenario related songs. I don't know, just something about it's really cool. That's especially by the time Mrs. CB comes out, because she actually has her own singing lines or whatever for the songs, which is actually kind of nice. Even to that day, I guess they were still adding some voices to that song. Maybe that's something to take away from. But anyways, the song is really cool to me, so I actually really do like it. So that's that.